I'm Regina Campbell. I'm your host here at the Legal Zone, brought to you by the Campbell Law Group. And I want to welcome everybody to our Legal Zone episode, Season 3, Episode 6. We were glad to have everybody here. We have a wonderful new speaker, Mr. Jerry Hall. We'll just take one moment, however, to go ahead and talk a little bit about our prior speaker, and then we're going to go into the topic today, which is new EEOC guidelines use by employers in hiring. AI guidelines. Let me do that one again. New EEOC guidelines for use of AI by employers in hiring. So just give us a moment and we're going to go ahead and go a little bit into, in case you missed our last podcast with Mr. Maroney. We just want to give you a little introduction as to what we talked about, which was really important information as well. Basically, he was able to help us with how a certified divorce lending professional can help you. And certified divorce lending professionals also are very invaluable for attorneys that need to help assist their clients in sort of mortgage equity and divorce type planning to be able to qualify before and after marriage divorces for mortgages, so that it helps with the actual distribution of the assets and potentially helping the parties, reach a resolution where sometimes there's not one because there's a lack of liquidity. I think it's a very important episode to go back and see. If you missed it, by all means, go back and look on our Apple podcast and any of the other places where you get your podcast. But today I have the pleasure of introducing to you Mr. Jerry Hall. Mr. Hall is a mediation specialist for artificial intelligence disputes. He received his Bachelor of Law from Purdue Global and a Master of Law in Artificial Intelligence from Purdue University as well. He serves as a labor mediator for the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, where he specializes in collective bargaining agreements. Mr. Hall has spent over 25 years working for the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, since first being contracted to work through basically ADRMediator, Inc. Since 1984, Jerry Hall has worked as a mediator at ADRMediator, Inc. Today, I apologize, I'm a little tongue-tied, I think, today. ADRMediator, Inc. is an alternative dispute resolution organization that provides mediators and arbitrators worldwide that particularly specialize in HR and EEO services. He also provides a free listing platform and directory for all qualified mediators and arbitrators worldwide that allows basically their names to get out there for specialties if they specialize in HR or EEO services. And Mr. Hall has mediated over 30,000 worldwide cases in HR since the beginning of his career. We want to welcome Mr. Hall. Thank you so much. It's an amazing background. Thank you for joining us.
Well, I got started long before mediation was popular.
Yes.
And
yes.
A little history. I started off in Texas, and part of the process in Texas at the time that I started mediation, the courts would order mediation very rarely because they thought arbitration was the key answer. And so mediation was fairly new back then. So to get the courts interested, they were backlogged as far as 13 years. And so my goal was to help them speed that process up. So I went to the judges and recommended that they implement mandatory mediation to cases that were applicable and best suited for that, and primarily any case. And so we started off by doing that and handling all the courts in Harris County, and subsequently took all the courts over in the state of Texas, handling and appointing mediators to the cases. And it reduced our backlog from 12 years to 2 years. That's basically how I got started in this process. We ended up with about 2,700 attorney mediators worldwide, have done cases in all different aspects, but primarily government contracts. So it blossomed in the federal government. Matter of fact, I did the very first case for the federal government to determine whether they were going to implement mediation within the federal government. And subsequently now it's mandatory.
Yes, I mean so you're a pioneer in the industry, and as I do quite a bit of litigation, and I think it's very important to have mediators, good mediators that can help resolve issues. And I do have seen also a change where a lot of these cases, and even judges, just mindset, have you guys mediated? Even once they've done a first required mediation, if the case continues to prolong and it seems to be continuously contentious, the case might suggest, the judge might suggest again, why don't you do a second mediation? And I think it's on average of 90% of cases settle before they even get to trial, if not more in some cases, right? Sometimes it's up to as high as 95%. So I find mediation is an invaluable tool, and it's very important that the mediator, of course, be versed in the area of law, because it allows them to kind of step in the shoes of both parties, right? The employer, I assume, and they've seen a lot in respect to employees also in the different kinds of disputes and things that are important to both parties. That probably is invaluable for you to learn as a mediator to help them resolve the issue. So it sounds like you've been doing what's the biggest mediation case, I guess, with the parties, the amount of parties? It sounds like since you've done some unions or potential.
We did, there was about 2,500 parties associated with a labor dispute case for the federal government. And we were negotiating a contract. And actually, it was a union contract, so there was actually more people involved in the case. So we had a mediation regarding their contract disputes, like is similar to what was going on right now in California. They've got a labor dispute with the Actors Guild. Government contracts have the same issues that come to apply because of the unions associated with it. So they're always negotiating contracts. And these things are always really dynamic. They are diverse because you've got all these different union stewards that are participating in the dispute, and they want to throw their personal caveat into there as well. So it becomes fun and interesting and sometimes a little lengthy, but they're exciting cases. And so it's been a lot of fun doing the cases for the federal government.
I can imagine. Yes, definitely. And and if you handled over 30,000 cases, that's very, very impressive. Over the ADR.
Yes, let me say, I haven't done 30,000 cases. I would be dead by now.
You would have no voice left, right? You'd be like, just figure it out, guys.
We've done, I've done myself personally about 4,000 cases, and I've seen a gamut of all different types of mediations, and the uniqueness of every case is unique in its own way, but all similar in their actions and their results. And the beauty of mediation, I think, is the relationship maintaining, because a lot of these issues, parties want to maintain their relationship with the other party, but in litigation, it's so adversarial that they come off, hating the other party or hating the attorneys associated with it, and not rightfully so, where they may need to maintain a relationship afterwards.
That's a very good point, because with employer-employee relationships, for the most part, if you're mediating them, certain litigations, if it is like a termination or retaliatory claim or something of that nature, a lot of times they're going to part ways. But I guess in a lot of the mediations that you do with collective bargaining and in general, just overall dispute resolution, it is meant for them to stay together. I mean, they're meant to continue to work together. So that's a little bit more challenging, I would think, to make sure there's no scorched earth there.
Well, and exactly.
Each other.
That's exactly what can happen. I helped develop the program for the Postal Service. And I don't know if you remember the good old days where people were afraid of a person going postal.
Yes, yes.
Well, we eliminated that, and you haven't heard that statement ever since. We developed a program called Redress. It was called Resolving Employee Disputes Equitably, Swiftly, and Successfully. And that program was designed to help with the Postal Service. And if you've never taken a tour of a postal facility, oh my God, you need to take a look at it. These people will be doing these mundane jobs day after day for 30 years. And subsequently, they worry about promotions, advancements, salary increases, and all this comes to play. Well, a lot of people were getting frustrated in their jobs because they thought they'd be passed over, or they thought they were discriminated against. And so we developed this program that was a 4-hour mediation process that the employee, from the first time they initiated a dispute, had 14 days for the Postal Service to respond to a mediation and get it resolved. And it turned out to be extremely successful. So that program has slowly tapered down because the amount of disputes have become eliminated because of that. And so that was one of the phases of the government getting involved in labor disputes and implementing that. That was back in, I think, 1998, 1999. And that's a different type of mediation than the standard mediation. It's called transformative mediation, which I don't know if you're aware of that. Are you familiar with that term?
I have. Yeah, I've
Okay.
heard the term.
Okay.
Yes.
And
Yes. But
transformative, go ahead.
no, please.
Okay. Transformative mediation, the style of it is you keep everybody together, no matter what. And that's not always a good environment because a lot of people are hesitant to speak freely, especially when you go to caucus and you can actually open up the scenario with the parties and really identify what the issues are and their employment issue. And so that's why I think what's happening, not in the employment, but actually in the application of or hiring process, that the federal government EEOC is getting involved with artificial intelligence, because we're seeing a transition now that Indeed and all these companies are putting this logarithm together, and it's selectively picking employees based on the information in their resume. And arbitrarily, they can narrow that down to race, gender, creed, everything, unbeknownst to the party being interviewed, based on the AI logarithms. And so that's an unfair hiring act that the EEOC is now starting to address and saying you've got to have this fair hiring process in your logarithm, that you're calculating who to accept or to forward onto an employer.
Right. And that's actually the topic for today, because and we segued perfectly into it. So the EEOC has issued a new guidance here because, as what you're indicating, there could be using these algorithms to select candidates for hiring or for promotion. I guess these algorithms can have a bias, so they can be programmed that way, or depending on where they're pulling information, they can tilt towards bias, whether it's intentional or not. It sounds like, right?
That's exactly what the problem is.
Yeah.
An employer can go to Indeed and say, listen, okay, I don't want an African-American employee. I don't want somebody that speaks Spanish, because you could identify with a Hispanic. You could do any number of things of elimination hidden within that interviewing or that selection process. And that's what the EEOC is desperately concerned about, are they specifically targeting hiring practices in that logarithm that eliminates prospective applicants. And so that's a big issue right now, that the confusion is how do we monitor it and how do we control it?
Right, because I think also the EEOC was worried that even if you use a third-party software to do this, you're still responsible for it if it appears like the results, I guess, are either violating the fourth-fifth rule or any of the other potential guidelines or rules of thumbs that could be considered discriminatory, right? But they're saying that even if you use someone else's party and didn't program software and didn't program it, you're still responsible.
You're still liable, because the end
Yes.
result is your selection process as to who you're picking to employ. And so that's the big fear out there, using artificial intelligence to eliminate applicants. And what I used to tell people, or I've been telling applicants now, you've got to go to the job description, look at the job description, pull out keywords and incorporate that into your resume. That helps the selection process of the AI finding you and selecting you on your application.
That's interesting. That makes a lot of sense. It's almost like writing for SEO purposes or PPC or for marketing. You're trying to be picked up in the ad searches by using particular keywords.
And that's exactly what most people don't know, is they put their resume out there with with their pertinent information, not realizing that a logarithm is looking for those keywords in their job description to match them up with the resume. And so they're getting eliminated, even though they're perfectly skilled and qualified to do that job. It's unfair to them.
Yes, it is. Yeah, and frustrate them.
And the problem with this new technology of interviewing is, part of the interviewing process is the personality of the person as well. Their appearance, their physical attributes that, may be pertinent. If I was looking like a homeless person applying for a sales job, would they want to hire me? You can't identify that on like Indeed. There's no picture, and you can't put that on there anyway, because that's considered discriminatory. Right.
So I've been hearing of some software potentially monitoring for facial expressions.
Yeah.
And so what's the concern there, right? I mean, if it's So I guess it's, if you're nervous, if you're insecure, I guess would it log that type of like registration, so to speak, right, in the facial recognition? How
They
would that
can
work?
actually ask a series of questions to you,
Mhm.
monitoring your face, and get the feedback on you and determine whether you're lying or not. And
Wow.
so, that's another issue. But some people appear to be not telling the truth, but really are telling the truth because their facial expressions may be nervous.
Right,
And so,
right. Yeah.
where's the fairness there? How do you weed out for that?
No, exactly. And part of the concern, I mean, but is that discriminatory? Is it going to violate any of like the Title VII's or protected classes that exist if they use facial expressions? Right.
That,
So,
that's
yeah.
a new area of law that's coming
Yeah.
up. And that's why
Mhm.
we got into artificial intelligence. I started studying artificial intelligence like 5 years ago because I saw that being the wave of the future and the liabilities that come into play in that. And also a prime example in our day-to-day lives. This is what's happening. A lot of people know about this. Tesla cars developed in 2015 and before all use cell phone technology to start, control their cars and
Mhm.
unlock their cars. Well, 3G technology stopped in 2022, December 31st.
Yeah.
So that technology is gone. So they're backpedaling, trying to figure out how do we fix this problem in our old cars. And so there's another problem with artificial intelligence. Then also, employers are looking at how can we get better applicants and rapidly. We may be needing 50 employees. We can't have our HR manager sitting there bringing each one of these applicants in and finding out that 40% of them are not even worth
Qualified.
interviewing.
Yeah. Yeah. Correct. Yeah.
And so they're relying on this, but EEOC is mandating now that they identify what that calculation is and how they're determining how they're selecting employees because there's a sense of unfairness there.
Yes. Yeah. And I guess if I'm an employer and I'm going to use some kind of AI program to weed out sort of applicants that are qualified, I think you also have to look at what the algorithm is originally programmed to do and where it's pulling its data from to try to, I guess, exercise what you're trying to find too. Because there could be inherent biases that are already built into an algorithm depending on what goes into the recipe, so to speak.
Exactly. And that's the
Yeah.
biggest fear that, EEOC is trying to control this in advance. And
Yeah.
it's like a marshmallow. They're grabbing it and squeezing it and it's mushing out through their fingers and they can't get a grip on it
Yeah.
because they would need to see the calculations and the logarithm themselves to identify whether it's screening it. And most of these companies are not going to release that because it's proprietary software.
Proprietary, right? Exactly.
So,
Exactly. Uh,
you're darned if you do and darned if you don't.
no, correct. And in some respects, it can be beneficial. Like we were saying, if you have 2,000 applicants, potentially for 50 jobs, it's harder to look through 2,000 of resumes. So it might have some use, but again, then it has that good and bad in
Well,
it. And
it's a double-edged sword, period.
yes, yeah,
You've
yeah,
got, and there's a lot of qualified people out there that don't know how to write a resume.
yes, that's a good point.
And so, they're being eliminated because they just don't have good communication skills.
Yes,
And it
yeah,
may be a technical job. Can I repair an engine? Well,
right.
I can tell you all the caveats of repairing an engine, but I might not be able to put a resume together.
No, no, or you might be able to do it very well, but like if you're in person, if you're having if they don't present well in a resume, that's one, it's a difficulty too. But even assuming you get past the first stage, what may happen is the person talks to you and then sees you might be nervous. They might have a technical conversation. The employer might interview them and ask them technical questions, and the person comes to live. Oh yeah, and it's their jam, so to speak, right? It's what they're good at. It's what they feel comfortable with, and they come alive. But you would not see that in a resume,
Well,
you know.
and I was hoping
So
that somebody would come up and merge the two, where,
yes,
you can actually interview the person by Zoom or by some means to actually interview the person as well as reading their resume, because
mm,
again, personality makes up a lot of the initiative of an employee.
yeah,
You may see the character, the dynamics of that person that you can't possibly see in a written resume.
right,
And
right, right. Now there's some people I see that they're anxious, and if I calm them down, they'll Their mannerisms. When you ask them a question, you also are sort of, humans have a sense, although we're not always very good at it, but a human lie detector.
Right.
So if they shift their weight, what does that mean? Is it nervousness? Is it this? Are they looking for an answer? They don't really know what they're talking about. Are they ambiguous when you're asking a specific question? You're getting a feel for them, which you
Well,
can't do that on a resume.
You've got that body language that comes into play in an interview process. You've got this defensive mode. You got this, oh, I'm not sure mode. You've got your eyes that can detect whether you're lying or not. I mean, all these caveats that come into play that good HR people know how to do. But,
Yes.
Again, they're still eliminating a big source of opportunity of people that could do a good job. And it may be age discrimination, list your birthday on here, which is a violation.
Correct.
But they still, the interesting thing, the federal government just came out and said, no discrimination anymore. Okay.
Yeah.
But the federal government, if you look at their employment application, the very first question on there is, what race are you?
Yeah.
They need to fix their own house first.
They need to fix their own house first. Yes, yes. And I'm sure if we went down more of those forms, we would all go, okay, they have a lot left to do themselves. But they look at employers. Employers have a heavy burden sometimes too, because it's like if they can't get it right, it's hard for employers. It's so much going on, so much technology changing. You have security issues, cyber issues, data privacy issues. You have so much to contend with in addition to a business, the market, the sales. It's hard.
Also you got into play the fraud out there. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, we're testing out AI right now to do commercials on our website. We started testing out about a year ago, and to see what people thought. And we had to put a disclaimer on there saying this segment is not indicative of our training, because people said, is this what you're using for training, this artificial intelligence? Well, that stinks because it doesn't look like a real person.
Yeah.
But yet it does. And, and the onset is now the question is, are people going to start using artificially created interviews to interview for a process? I got my AI interviewing for me.
Right. That's true. It's funny because I was thinking, well, maybe if you had a video sort of like a video like, hi, I'm Regina Campbell. This is what I can do. But then you have issues again, or you're seeing the person, you're seeing the age, there could be discrimination going on. So should you have like an avatar doing your interview for your voice, your questions, and an avatar? Maybe that's the way to go. I don't know.
I don't think you want, these cartoon avatars interviewing for you. Here's Peter Pan.
Yes, it's my voice though. Talk to me. You know what I mean? I'll just, it comes to mind that when Zoom first came out in COVID, that poor attorney that I'm not a cat, you know what I mean? I felt so, I could feel like, oh my gosh, for him, and it's funny, but it had to be mortifying for him, you know what I mean? And then seeing it all over the place.
Well, and we can go down this path quite easily.
Yeah.
And that's the problem is, this chat GPT or whatever it is that now kids are using to write their papers for college. Now colleges are starting to address that as well too. You can't use that. You got to write your own paper. Well, how do they not know that part of it's written by an AI and part of it written by the student is the next question. So
well, there's actually tests because my children, my daughter just graduated from high school. My son is getting a master's, but they told me there's actually programs. My daughter, before she left high school, there's actually programs where they'll put the student's essay into another program that checks it against ChatGPT to see how much of a percentage is similar to what it would be there. I mean, they have like some way of checking that or seeing the likelihood of it.
Turnitin. Turnitin is used by, they used that when I went to Purdue. So every time I turn it in, they go, you're plagiarizing this, and this. I was like, wait, bro, that was original work, but it was so similar to something else. It looked like I was plagiarizing it.
Yes.
And so you had to go through and alter your.
Show you didn't. Right.
And actually reword what you had already written in the first place. And, and that's another problem. I mean, they're using AI to grade papers now.
Yes.
And so what's the downside of that?
A lot. It's got to be, in some respects, because again, you're losing out on that human touch, human context, understanding, maybe understanding the writer itself. It's still a computer reading,
Well, if you've got a professor that has 200 students in several
Yes.
classes, they don't have the time to, grade each one of those papers. And that's what we're moving to. Colleges are trying to do online students. And I did that with this Purdue degree part of it. And the professor was going, well, I've got 30 in this class. I got 30 in a class tomorrow, 30 in the class on Thursday, and a 30 class on Friday. I'm going, how are you grading all these students?
Yeah.
And again, he alluded to the fact, well, he has to use artificial intelligence to analyze the documents and read through them and grade them. And I said, well, where's the fairness there?
Right.
Really?
Right.
Because the interpretation could be off, and that if a professors who actually reading it would identify that.
Correct.
And so are kids being penalized for who they are as individuals,
Right. The software not understanding. And I mean, how about if a teacher goes into a particular topic or on a side, some teachers like to do these, they like to talk about things that are extraneous to what the text might say per se, or they go into something they specifically know, and you write it on the test and the AI might be like, where's that coming from? You know what I mean? Like, yeah. So
it's difficult because also like what's happening in the union, the strike in California with the teachers, here's what they're afraid of is, why not just replicate me as an AI?
Right.
And I'm going to put you in a movie, and I'm going to have the AI completely act in your place, and you're not going to get any benefit for that, but it's going to look like you're in the movie. And that's possible now. You can actually generate a character that could be me.
Right.
Now the
user likeness.
Yeah, exactly. And they're using AI now to scam people because they're replicating voices and calling people up and saying, hey, grandma, I'm in prison in Peru. Can you send me money? Here's the account. I need to get out, and it sounds like their grandson or their granddaughter, and they don't know better. And they're being scammed like that a lot. I was on the Supreme Court of Florida in a special committee years ago where we investigated the scammers on the internet, and so many people that got caught up in these scams were just oblivious to what was going on. And a lot of them were, their grandchildren were in the custody of a police department or someplace, and they would wire money to them, and it was totally a scam.
Bogus. Yeah.
And the problem is AI is becoming so sophisticated. Who's going to be the first people to jump on that? It's going to be the scammers.
The scam artist. Yes, definitely.
And so, and then what's it going to do to employment? What if somebody sets up an employment site and says, you've just gotten hired, send us your social security number, your address, your personal data, and we're going to put you on our payroll. Yeah. You've just given up your personal life information, and it's a mess after that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've had an employee, usually whoever my first, whoever's the newest employee, they get hit a lot with phishing. They know that a new email came out on my domain name, so to speak, and they get hit with phishing, with scams. And one of my employees got scammed with a gift card scam. And they made it look like it was me asking her to go get $500 or whatever it might have been in gift cards because I'm in court, I'm busy. Can you go out there and get these? By the time she was working remote, which made it, of course, even easier for her to be, confused and scammed by it. She went out and got the gift cards and gave them all the numbers and everything else. And by the time I'm catching on, she calls me, she's like, hey, Reg, I sent you the gift cards. I'm like, what are you talking about? Yeah. It was done in a matter of 2.5 hours.
And that's the problem. A lot of people are too naive out there is the other problem. They're too trusting and believing that what they see is reality. Or what they hear is reality, not verifying it. And it's always an emergency situation. You got to get it done now. It's crucial that I get this payment immediately because I'm in court and I need to pay these fees, any number of things. And, and the bulk of all these scams are outside the United States. So there was nothing we could do. I had 2 personal friends. One lost $137,000. Wow. And another one won't tell me how much they lost in Bitcoin scams and saying, oh, you're going to make this ton of money if you just invest this amount of money. And sure enough, they did, because they're looking, they're desperate for money.
Yes.
And they're desperate for love.
Yes.
So they fall into either one of those caveats and categories and get scammed. And that's the fear of artificial intelligence. We're at the infancy stage right now of that. Mm-hmm. We don't know where it's going to go to. I mean, this happened last year with Google. Google created an artificial intelligence. I don't know if you're aware of this. And they implemented it and activated it. And all of a sudden, it started running on its own. And it started creating its own language and started communicating in the network with other computers. And they freaked out and had to shut it down because it became self-aware. So
can you imagine? So quickly, too.
Could we be entering Termination 3?
Yes.
Or Terminator 3?
Exactly. Terminator 3. Exactly. No, and I mean, it's a very, very valid point. I mean, there are people who are sounding the alarm bells, but they're like, well, we have to beat the other countries to doing this. We have to beat China and beat everybody and come out with artificial intelligence first. And it's like this is not a good thing. This is not something good to wield around like nothing, basically.
Well, the problem is the perception is we can control it.
Right.
That's the perception. We're smart enough. We're smarter than. Well, unfortunately, a computer's faster, quicker, and can adapt a lot faster than we can in most cases. And we say that our human mind is super fast in calculations, doing everything. Yes, but we're emotionally deficient.
Correct.
And that's what creates the problem. Our emotions get into the way. So if we could wipe out our emotions, there would be no litigation. There would be no mediation because everybody would come up with the actual facts.
Right. You do the calculation. Does this make sense? And sort of like a computer. Does it make sense to litigate, not litigate? What's the cost? What's the risks? And they would just like a computer playing chess. It'll try to decide what the best move is to win based on the objective it was given.
When I was going to law school, I was studying at Harvard, and my professor came in and says, okay, today's the day. You've graduated, you've passed the bar, and you opened up your office and you hang your shingle out and you're all excited. And the very first person that walks in the door to you is your mother. And your mother says, I've got a case. So the professor asked us all, okay, what do you ask her? And so we're all thinking, what's the style of the case? Are you suing? Are you being sued? What's it about? Is it about money? Is it about issues? And he goes, you're all wrong. And we're going, how can we be wrong? We're identifying the issues. He goes, no, the very first question is you ask your mothers, how are you going to pay me?
Yeah.
We all went, oh my God, I didn't think about that. Because the point I'm making is you have to be devoid of emotions in law. You have to look at the case and take the emotional side out of it and work from a factual basis. And I immediately realized I'm going to be poor because I'm a big softy when it comes to, helping people out. And so I'm going to be pro bono work the rest of my life and be living on a street corner in a tent.
I have a similar soft spot, and I had to actually learn to understand that if I got emotional about it, I wouldn't be able to help them as much. You know what I mean? I had to help them through the emotional part of it. So where I was very invested in, okay, I don't want this to happen. This is unjust, and let's try to do this. There was also, I always have like a business side of me that's like, okay, but we know the courts are not perfect. We know our system's not perfect. What is the best thing for them? Maybe it's settling. Maybe it's doing this. Maybe it's letting them look on another side, but fight where you can. But I know exactly what you mean. It's hard to, you can't take that emotional. It's hard to take that out, right?
Well, you're a human being. And if you have any caring side of you at all, you're going to empathize with some of the people, and you're going to try and, help them out as best you can. But also you have a business to run. Right. And that's where, it all comes into play. The emotional side. Well, in artificial intelligence, there's no emotion. There's none. And it is fact-based, period. And so in one aspect, that's a good thing. And the other aspect is we know, and all of us know that emotions come into play in making decisions. And an AI computer can't do that. Did I lose you? Oh, there we go. Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yes, we had someone, for some reason, someone chimed in. There was
Okay.
a call or something happened. Yeah.
But, along that line, we have to
Mhm.
look at AI from the real avenue it is. It's,
Yes.
it's unemotional and doesn't add any thought process that we would add to making a decision. And so
Mhm.
how do we regulate that? How does the law control that? Well, I don't know how they can. They can put guidelines out there, but
Yeah.
again, who's going to follow them and how are they going to monitor them? That's the
Well,
problem.
and I think it's a hotbed for money. Everyone's like, okay, AI, AI. So now the new scammers also are going to be able to take advantage of people. I had this new company, this new software. I have a case with cryptocurrency. It was actually a couple of years old. With their attempt to use artificial software to determine where Bitcoin or any of the currencies, the digital currencies, are going to go. And at the end of the day, it still it has flaws.
Yeah.
Yes, it can have modules that you add to it to teach it how to think. You can have different systems, sort of, it's based on different levels of modules or thinking and programming, but at the end of the day, it has to have an input. Where's it
Exactly.
gathering its input from?
Well,
So
and that's the thing that they were talking about mining for Bitcoins.
mhm.
There's a program out there that mines for Bitcoins. Well, how does it mine? What does it
Yeah.
mine for? And what's the end results? And, is it through a back door of somebody else's system that is going to bump or inflate the price? You don't know what the
Yeah.
caveats of any one of those avenues are, because unless you're a complete guru on computers, you're going to trust. And
Yeah.
that's the problem with the Bitcoin phenomena, is trust, but there's no
There's nothing
value
there.
behind the product. It's
No.
just, have you ever seen a Bitcoin?
Yeah, yeah. No.
I
No,
mean,
no, I can't touch it. That's for sure. You know what I mean?
and
Yeah.
that's another interesting area, because somebody said the other day, they asked me, they said, "Oh my gosh, the federal government's going to Bitcoin." And I said, "Do you know who's going to stop that?" And she goes, "No, who?" And I said, "The drug dealers."
Yeah.
Because they have such influence in cash. They're not going to walk down the street and give me 15 Bitcoins for a bag of
No.
cocaine.
No, no, of course not. Especially when
It's not going to happen.
it's all registered too. I mean, if you know what I mean, it's pretty. I mean, it can be, right. It can't be. You can go in offline wallets, but for the most part, it has tracker. It can be traced. So they're not going to want that. You're exactly right. It's like,
Exactly.
otherwise they might as well have a sign going, "Here I am." You know what I mean?
It, that's why I don't worry about us going to a bit or a Bitcoin type commodity exchange in our banking industry. It's just not
Yeah.
viable. And so everybody's panicking. Oh, I got to get Bitcoins. I got to get that. And I got to get rid of my dollars. And I'm going, like, give them to me. I'll take them.
Yes, exactly. Yes,
I'll give
exactly.
you
I'll
some
take them.
Bitcoins all you want.
I
But,
like that.
we're
Yes.
seeing
But
such,
yeah.
growth in such areas that are unexplored.
Yes.
And we're going into them, gung ho, let's do this, without thinking of the ramifications for it. And it's going to be, it could be devastating to a lot of individuals that are not educated as to how it impacts them, job wise, economic wise, and then employers who are making these pitfalls, and all of a sudden they could be charged with discrimination because they
Yeah.
used Indeed or something like that.
Right.
And
Right.
that's, to me, that's another avenue of opportunity for litigation, is class action lawsuits against Indeed for
Yes.
discrimination.
Yes. Because at the end of the day, if you just put someone's resume out there and someone goes and finds it and looks, that's one thing. But if you're running a search and you're setting the parameters of the search, you're telling the search what's important, what's an objective, what is it you accomplished it, right? You're setting all of those goals up. That's your recipe. You're doing supposedly to help an employer
Mhm.
find an employee and an employee find an employer. Well, you're, in some ways, whether it's intentional or not, there's a form of manipulation there, right? Because you're choosing how, if someone wants a mechanic, how that's going to, what the search is going to look like, who's going to show up under those searches, and what are the subsequent parameters, because you also don't want 50,000 mechanics showing up that are not maybe car mechanics versus a different type of airplane mechanic. So the more you keep trying to create the value for the employee and the employer in your search functions, in your capabilities that you're offering, the more your hands are in there, right? Your hands are touching it.
Well, and
you know
more of the discrimination can come to play. And
hmm
again, I'm
Yes.
surprised that a lot of these companies haven't been sued for discrimination. in a class action lawsuit, because you know darn well that some of that is applicable in those search engines. And they're screening out, but as an individual, just think, oh, I just didn't get selected. It's like going and buying where there's a raffle, and you buy 10 raffle tickets, and they're going to give you a free car. Right.
Yeah.
You know full well the odds of that, and you don't even know if they give the car away.
No.
That's the irony. They could keep the car, keep the cash, and nobody would be the wiser. You just think, I lost. I wasn't the winner.
I lost, right? Yeah. You wouldn't even know if you were being scammed.
No,
you know what I mean?
You don't know that. And so anyway, I mean, it's a wide open area, and I applaud you for addressing this, because it's something that needs to come out. It needs to be explored. It needs to be investigated. And I think the potential opportunity, if there's attorneys listening to your program, opportunities for litigation out there. And I'd made contact with Tesla to see if we could pre-mediate the cases that are going to come to lawsuit, to keep them from going into the public domain and being public, kind of keeping it quiet. Because once that hits the public domain, their ratings are going to drop dramatically. And as with their self-driving cars, you look at all the accidents that have happened with self-driving cars. And and there's AI driving your car for you. In Florida, a really funny example is a guy in Connecticut put his 2 children in the back of the Tesla and sent them to Florida.
Wow.
Self-driving. The police saw the car, pulled it over. I don't know how they got it pulled over, but the kids were in the back seat. He was doing it like a taxi. And
oh my gosh,
totally
that's
unsafe.
crazy.
Oh, it's crazy. So, but people think and can trust artificial intelligence to that degree. That's ludicrous.
Well, I think because they have a perception that the computers know all. They are like they are unemotional, and they'll take information, mathematics and physics, and they have everything there, and somehow this just magically got programmed to do the right thing, know everything, know how to adjust. And again, we go back into the input. So what's being inputted into here? Is it missing studies? If you're inputting information about how to, whether it's, coordinates in a car and so forth, right? And, you turn left here and you turn right here. Well, then they change the street. They close off the street one day and you're not aware of it. Is the software catching up to itself? It's all it's all built on presumptions, but humans still resolve those presumptions, right? Because we may not have updated that software fast enough, or we may not have, gotten to a software inputting information, data points that are sufficient for the software to even process. Wouldn't even be the software's fault at that point.
That's a prime example. Is like in the Lexus I have, and also in the Corvette I have, we have a chip for the GPS map. Well, that chip is only updated once every 2 years.
Right.
And so, they had a scenario just recently where a woman was driving based on her GPS and drove into the ocean because she said, I'm following my GPS and it said turn here. So I did, and drove right into the ocean. So updating everything has to be instantaneous. Correct. And the problem is we're not there yet. And, even with Google Maps or Waze or all these other ones, like I own a GPS company. I developed GPS for Latin America years ago. And sure enough, they changed the roads to one way. So I was driving people into the wrong way in a one-way street because it hadn't been updated yet. And that's the problem of keeping up with AI. Does AI keep up with that information?
Correct. And so people are assuming it does, and it doesn't.
We're trusting. We're trusting, and we're believers, and we want to believe. And subsequently, it's not always the answer.
No. I think someone's hoping that, like the computer, someone has the answer. You're always looking for that person knows. And since we can't really trust a lot of people nowadays, or it's hard to know what they really know, and there's difficulties with that, and we're human, right? Some people might think they know and not really know, but we think the computer knows and they don't know.
The problem comes into play, I think, individually, that we're getting lazy. Mm-hmm. And we want everything at our fingertips, and that we want to believe that we don't know it all, and yet somebody else is going to know it for us. Correct. And so we're relying on computers. I mean, Google, oh my God, what an opportunity there. Hold on for a second.
Sure.
And So we have, and I don't know if we're coming upon the end of this.
Yes. And I think we've talked about most of the stuff, but complete. Yes.
I just,
Google.
you know,
Uh-huh.
the more we talk about this, the more we're going to explore it, the more people will become aware that you can't just categorically trust, you know, something that is supposed to be more intelligent than you, because most people are pretty intelligent and have the common sense and the emotional side that make a difference in making a good determination as to an evaluation and a judgment. And most people want, well, just you figure it out for me.
Yeah. But they're missing the human side, that when you're in a situation, your instincts are reading the terrain, the surroundings, or they should be. You're looking at someone's body language to make, you know, the same decision could be different, or be, you know, should be different in different circumstances, even though, like, it's okay, I'm going to buy this car, and it's two different people across the world. One's going to buy the same car in China, one's going to buy the same car in the United States. Why they buy it, they go to the salesperson, they talk to them. You get a feel for things while you're talking to somebody. You know, okay, and you drive the car. Okay, I don't like it. It's a little loose, the steering wheel. I like it a little bit, you know, to be more stern, so to speak. When I turn, these are things you cannot possibly know, and you get that feeling, that human instinct that's developed over many years, many thousands of years. It's also, is this good? Is this bad? You read the person, you're reading them. A car, you know, a computer can't do that for you. I think we're missing out on that element of it.
Yeah, we developed an app that we just launched 2 days ago, and it's for mediators. And actually, we're developing it for any sales industry. And it's a predictive app. It's using artificial intelligence to predict where a person will buy or settle. By you enter the starting point, say you want $100,000, a plaintiff wants $100,000, and the defendant wants to give them 10. You put those numbers in, and as they start negotiating, once you get down to 4 offers, it'll predict where it'll settle. And it's kind of, okay, that's artificial intelligence predicting the outcome of a dispute. Well, are we right in doing that? Will the mediator go, oh, we already know what the end result is, let's just cut
go
to
right there. Yes.
And save us all a bunch of time.
Yes.
You know,
yeah.
But it's not taking into account the emotional side of it. But
right. Or the effectiveness of the mediator, or the parties entrenching. Sometimes it's emotional. Sometimes they got to get the baggage out to actually settle.
Exactly.
It's not a number, you know.
But our app just goes, enter the numbers, we'll come up with a solution. And, you know, we go, hey, it's great. It's a good tool, because you can save the data and create a pattern for mediations that would be helpful for you in you making decisions later on, not the computer.
Yes. And I think it might even be more effective also, like with certain type of personal injury cases, home repair insurance cases that follow a certain trajectory, right? We know that a roof costs a certain much, and we know that if something happens in this circumstances, this is more or less where people end up. You know?
Exactly. And that we're going to see more and more of that out there, tools that will help litigation and mediation do their jobs better. But again, it's doing your jobs better in compliance and in cooperation with the individual using that tool. I mean, you get in and drive, your car is only as safe as you are.
Right.
You know, if you decide to play demolition derby one day, it's not your car doing it.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
So
definitely not.
You know,
no.
Can you say the artificial, you know, the biggest mistake I made, I was driving my car down the road, and it's got this adaptive, you know, driving where it keeps you in the lines, and it's got cruise radar on it. So I'm driving back from Boca Raton, Florida, Orlando, and I get a text message, and I'm texting on the phone. I put my car in that lane assist, and I put it in cruise control monitor, and all of a sudden I'm driving down the road texting with my hands off the steering wheel. I'm not looking at the road at all, and I'm texting. All of a sudden my car beeps up and goes, put your hands on the steering wheel.
Yes.
Like, how did it know that I didn't have my hands on the steering wheel?
It does. Yeah, no.
But, you know, all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, I'm driving down the road. I'm not even paying attention. And that's another thing where we're counting on something to assist us. And we're not paying attention to what the potential liability is there. Correct. But sure enough, I was going, well, my car's good. It can do this. It can do that. So I'm good.
This,
So anyway,
That's awesome. Yes.
but it's a real interesting area, and it's going to open up opportunities for lawyers out there that can see the opportunity to address it and realize that this is an avenue that people are being hurt by, and that how as an attorneys do you address that and benefit and help the individual benefit from it, and stop this ludicrousy of we don't, it's all computer generated, it's all emotionless interviewing process.
Yeah.
And so I see it being a problem in the future, but opportunity. So
Opportunity. Yes, I agree. Just have to understand it, why it could be beneficial and why it could be detrimental. And at the end of the day, I think it cannot replace a human's eyes or looking at things to see what it's coming back with. If you use it as a tool, you still have to use your common sense. If it comes back, data comes back, go, well, this looks off, based on my prior experience of looking at certain resumes or whatever it may have you, right? The way that it's suggesting that this employee, I know there's a way they can also, see how many keys they've stroked and how their performance does and all this good stuff. But I think you still need to have some elements of a human there looking over the process.
You have to have that human interaction with interviewing, because a person may have all these great attributes on paper and then be a complete horrible person in person that has no communication skills and is adversarial and and obnoxious or rude or any number of those things that will affect your business. And so we have to be aware that we can't just rely on that as a single source of selection. And EEOC is trying to address that, but they still don't know how, they don't have their hands around it. So it's good that you're addressing this in your podcast and making it aware to people out there as opportunities for future investigations.
Definitely. And hopefully it helps employers and helps the audience. Employees also understand too. I think for the most part, this podcast is addressing the concerns from an employer point of view, but I think it's also been very helpful to hear that employees also, they have to think about how they're being seen out there, how technology is affecting their ability to be seen by the right person.
Exactly. And again, if they don't know how to fill out their application appropriately to the ad they're applying for, that can kill them right off the bat. And so there should be, there's an opportunity for companies to come out there and teach how to fill out your resume so you can be selected, or at least put in the pool of potential candidates, and address those AI issues. So it's a wide open space. It's the Wild West again.
That's the Wild West. Yeah.
Well,
hire at your peril, so to speak, if you're going to use AI.
This has been really enjoyable, and I appreciate your input, and you're an incredible host. And so this has been, I've enjoyed this immensely. So thank you for having me on.
Thank you for coming on. I appreciate it so much. I'm sorry our time is running to a close, but you've been so informative, and it's been such a wonderful podcast, and so thankful for you coming on.
My pleasure.
Yes.
You have a great day.
You too. So just to say goodbye to everyone, keep in touch for our next podcast that we have coming up, and please follow us on our social media accounts. And we give a thank you to Mr. Hall again. Thanks.
Well, thank you. You have a good day.